We're up.
Go.
We're up. We're live.
We are.
God, dear, there's nothing like some last minute stress.
No, technology has done whirlwind, right, for our
Blimey.
lives.
I was nonchalantly just going in, making a cup of tea for this, thinking everything will be fine. I've done a run through.
Right.
Nothing's going to go wrong. I spilt my tea. That went everywhere. Hello, Cara. Hello, everyone. Welcome to maybe the first and the last of these LinkedIn lives. Maybe not. We'll have to see how it goes. But yeah, massive welcome to everyone. Thank you if you have joined us. If you are trying to get on, hopefully you'll get on soon, and we're going to have a great hour or so together. So yeah, what can you expect now that we're actually on and live? It might be good for me to let you know what you've let yourself in for. We've got about 60 minutes, just under. So we're going to have a bit of a jam-packed session, really. We've got a great guest, great chat, great content all around financial education, financial well-being, the links to mental health, the links to the bigger well-being piece. I really, really want, if possible, this session to kind of mirror what we do at Finwell, the company I'm involved with, and make this session as interactive as possible and as engaging as possible. What I don't really want to do is, you to just listen to me and mainly to Cara and hopefully get some value. But I want you to get involved. I want you to put into the chat, maybe put in now, because we should see some of the comments coming up if there is anybody out there. Where are you from? Where are you dialing in from? What part of the world are you? This is, a global financial well-being project. So let us know that. And as we go through the session, maybe share some questions, some thoughts, some ideas, throw some questions at me, throw some at Cara as well. And let's make this a really interesting and engaging space. So that's it. So I'm going to just very quickly introduce myself for those that don't know me, and then I'm going to shut up and let Cara talk us through, because I'm really excited that she's the first guest. But yeah, a little bit about myself. So created Finwell, a financial wellbeing training company, almost 2 years ago now, 10 years in financial services, really passionate about that. But like a lot of probably people know on this call, lots of stuff's gone on in the world in the last few years, right? And I think the acceleration of the importance and the understanding around finances and working with money and managing money and the links that has to our overall health and well-being has been massive. So we've been on a bit of a whirlwind ride with Finwell. I worked with over 100 companies, really enjoyed that work, grew a great team that we work with now. And really why we're here is because some of our clients in the UK have offices in other countries, right? So they asked us to do more work and focus our attention in other areas. So we've done that. So we created Finwell Global. And I'm just really passionate and interested, genuinely curious and interested to know how things differ, how things are different in different cultures, different countries, different continents, because a lot of it's the same, but there's also some really, really unique challenges and differences in different places. So that's me. But Cara, how you doing? Thank you for joining me and getting through this with me.
Yes, I know it's afternoon there for here, but here it's morning. So good morning.
Yeah, good morning.
I'm so excited to be here with you.
Good. And you're having a good morning so far, yeah?
Excellent. You're the start of my day, so this is great.
What more could you want? Brilliant. Thank you. So let's get straight into it. I've obviously known you for a little while. I think it was just after lockdown or in lockdown. It's been a good couple of years that we've been chatting, numerous times online. So I know all about you and love everything you do. But maybe for the people that are listening or watching this back, just give us a real brief kind of introduction and sort of background into your early time.
Absolutely. And a lot of people who have followed me on my journey know, right? My early career was, on Wall Street. And then I transitioned to being a parent, right? Because Wall Street doesn't lend itself to that kind of a life. I moved into the nonprofit sector. And really, what I'd love to highlight, less about my career, but more about these decisions that we make and leads right into our financial well-being, which is I traded money for time. right? Before I had a family, I could go to jobs that paid really well, but I didn't own my time. And then once I had a family and I wanted to be more available, I really needed to move into something that had more flexibility. And so that's how I got into financial nonprofit work. And the financial literacy work I did with the nonprofit, I don't think I could have ever imagined that it would have sent me down this journey, right? I really thought I was doing something for me and what worked for me and the family. But as you know the story, right? After working on Wall Street and then coming into this nonprofit world where I went from Wall Street, the very wealthy individuals, to right the nonprofit that I ran. And really my two worlds then became these wealthy individuals on Wall Street, and then the opposite side of the spectrum, which was this underbanked, unbanked community. And you and I, as we spoke before, that's not a community you were really familiar with, but these are people that either have limited access to our financial system or no access. And interestingly enough, when people refer to unbanked or underbanked, they often just assume they don't know anything about finances. And what I came to find was not only like they're still engaging in finances, they're just engaging in it outside our financial system. So when building financial education for unbanked communities is very interesting because you're not doing it in the constraints of the what is in the textbook, right? You've got people that have figured out a way to work their financial lives. They're just doing it outside a traditional system. And so you have to then figure out how they're doing it so you can educate them on, yes, I get that this is working for you, but why would it be better to be in a more regulated financial system, right? And so that was really fascinating. But the financial well-being component of what I saw between these two groups was really the way they were working in the system. They all figured out what worked for them. As you and I have talked before about the rules of engagement, they figured out the game that they were playing and the rules that they needed to engage. But what didn't change is the humans behind the money and what people think money brings to them, does for them, makes them, more attractive or makes them more likable or makes them better than someone else. And those habits, beliefs, behaviors is really what led me on my journey to where I am today. Because I recognize that psychological thought process and what really makes people financially well. If you would have asked me that 30 years ago, I think I would have told you, well, if you have a lot of money, you're doing great. And I quickly came to learn a lot of money doesn't really actually mean anything other than you have a lot of money to manage, right? If you're not good at managing money or you're not comfortable with it or you're not really aware of how it works, a lot of money can be actually quite stressful, right?
Yeah.
And so we often just highlight the stress of like not having any money, but I think we need to call attention to there's stress around the idea of money, the conversation around money, the have a little or a lot. The stress around money just exists on a regular basis.
Yeah, we have that a lot in the UK. And we always start off with, well, what is financial well-being, because so many people do still think that it is just having money or having more money or a little bit more money. And don't get me wrong, money is massively important. I'm not going to be one of these people that says, oh, just don't worry about money. Just be happy and be grateful for what you've got. That's important.
I'm not happy when I can't turn the air conditioner on, or I'm not happy when I can't turn the heat on. So
we need the basics right. And then I think, from what I've learned in this space is that, it is about our attitudes, our behaviors, our decisions, everything that we've grown up with, really. And we look at this a lot. It's quite an interesting fact that our relationship with money is ingrained in us, is built into us by the age of 7. And this is not us that's come up with it. This is kind of, really intellectual, clever people at some of the top universities that have studied this. And maybe just start there. Tell us just a little bit about your background, because it's fascinating. I think that side of it, the psychology of money and the relationship with money side. But tell us a little bit more about you growing up, and was money about, what has led to your relationship with money, Cara?
Absolutely. And just to get our audience involved, if people want to throw in the chat kind of their first memory of money, and if you remember how old you were, right? And so as we have this conversation, be interesting to see some of these thoughts. But right, I grew up in Brooklyn. My dad's a school bus driver, so I didn't grow up with. We weren't poor, but by no means were we wealthy. And I was really my first experience with money was me selling, items door to door. And I have this, obviously, as I've studied this now in life, I don't know if you've spent any time in Brooklyn, but the houses in Brooklyn have very large brick stoops or staircases. I know some people are like, "What is the word stoops?" And so I I have this very vivid memory of walking house to house and knowing, if I walked up this flight of steps, that was often like 20 or 30 steps, like we're not talking about 4 steps, right? And if they weren't going to be home, or if I knew it was a cranky person, like I wasn't going to sell anything. And that investment of walking up those steps, I made that decision every house I walked to. And so that really became my association with money. How much is the work, is the, what is it, is the squeeze worth the juice? Like that became what really set me forth on my financial journey and my work ethic, and really the things I was willing to do. Like you, I'm not about dreaming. I'm about what makes me comfortable. It's a math equation for me. If I like to eat steak for dinner and I want to have the heat on, and I like to be able to drive my own car, right? What do those things cost? So now let's roll back into what jobs can afford those things. And if it's 2 jobs, so be it, right? Like for me, that was the way I looked at it. But that early component really set the stage for me for understanding I put the work in to get the money out. And the better decisions I make, right? It's not just an automatic, every door I knock on, I'm going to be able to sell something. So that oftentimes, then because you carry that through life, right? If your first experience is every time you asked your family for something, they just said yes with no context around how the money got there, or how it was being afforded, or maybe what you needed to do to earn that money. That messaging, when you get to a later point in life and you have to manage the money, or you're running out of it and you're like, how is this happening? Right? Because you haven't had those conversations
Yeah,
and made
yes.
those associations around how the money got there, and how your impact brought in the money or didn't bring in the money.
Yeah, and a lot of people, I think, are unaware of it still, right? They don't know why they have certain anxieties towards money, or making decisions, or why they overspend, or why they don't spend. All of these things can sometimes be done completely unaware, because people have never really thought about their relationship with money. So it's a
Yeah. And we have some
fascinating starting
great
point.
comments here, right? We've got some people talking about growing up with very little. There was anxiety in the household, right? So that stays with you, right? That's a something that you'll work on for the rest of your life, because once that feeling, emotion is brought into money management, I mean, the active amount of work you have to do to get that not to come up often. And even once you've done the work, let's make sure we call this out. Even after you've done the work, you're in a position where you're constantly self-aware and you're like, okay, I've gotten to the place I can afford this, whatever. If you're in a what I call a fast market, or a moment where there's a lot going on, maybe there's stress around something else unrelated, right? You may revert back to these automatic ingrained habits, behaviors, beliefs. So all of a sudden you're having anxiety around money that you're like, wait, I've worked through this. And then you recognize that you've got so much going on that you're not actually calm, and you're making those decisions right from that lizard part of your brain where you're in that survival mode.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, that's really what being, in my opinion, as we continue to talk about what financial well-being means, financial well-being means for me that you not only have the knowledge and how to use the knowledge, but you're also able to use logic, and you're able to help that fear that sets in, or that emotion that sets in, you can counterbalance it with what the facts.
Yeah. Feel free, carry on with the chat. Love seeing this coming through. So
Yeah.
as we said, get some more comments and ideas, thoughts, questions as well as we're going through here for myself or for Cara.
And I love that somebody put in here 8 years old, right? And using pocket money to pay for their uniform, right? Because as you get older, you then start to have these other associations about, right? My family should have done that for me, or these people should have done that for me, or, right? Like, why, as the person said, they wish they could have spent the money on stationery. So there was a clear decision made, right? If they needed to go to school with this uniform, about, just not being the kid without the uniform, right? And so think about how we carry that through our adult life, and how that then, sits with us and manifests with us. And then as we go forward as adults, or we have children, or, we're part of communities, how we then have a narrative. There's another comment this person put in that says, the classic, do you think money grows on trees? Right? So when you do indulge yourself, and I've been in this situation, again, we didn't grow up with a whole lot, but as I had a decent career and was able to afford things that I legitimately wanted and I worked hard for, I thought I, was at a place, I was stable, I can buy these things. The commentary I received from my family about that exact, well, how are you spending like that? Do you think it's just going to get replenished? Do you think it grows on trees? So now I'm being shamed and guilt for buying something that I not only worked for, but something I genuinely wanted. Did my wants not, all my needs were met. Not only were my needs met, other people's needs were met on my dime. And now I'm being, and why does somebody feel the right to then make that comment? And we do it to people all the time, right? We do this where
I caught myself doing it. I remember being told that. I think it's in the UK, it's a massive one, and we I think we say it with good intent. We're not trying to say, oh, money just doesn't grow on trees, but we're trying to maybe put some, or instill some knowledge there that you've got to work for it. You maybe got to save a bit, but if you look deeper into it, it can have that negative effect, right? It can be, negative really for people to receive that subconsciously as well, and think, well, no, actually, money is scarce and not abundant, and we shouldn't be able to just go out and earn money. So it's fascinating to me. Tell me a little bit, Cara, from and we'll carry on going back to the comments in the chat, but tell me a little bit. We've seen a massive uptake in the UK, obviously because of COVID and lockdown, and then coming out of that, and the cost of living crisis, and all the ingredients to kind of make this perfect storm. But what I think employers have realized, especially in the UK, is the importance of our focus on our mental health.
Right.
And that drives, performance, productivity, what businesses want from their people. And they've now realized, if you look at any guide or any paper or bit of research that's been done, the fact that our finances and financial worries and stress and anxiety is one of the, if not the main cause of that, other than perhaps, managers and workload. So tell us a little bit about how that's, being, how is that sort of coming out in the US, and the links between financial well-being and mental health? Is it a big thing, or is it still quite early days?
No, I mean, it's early in that I don't think, you could expect every company to be offering financial wellness, and when I say financial wellness, I think what's still happening here is this idea of like, we're just going to give out financial education. So before we really go down this barrel, Ryan, I want to just be clear for our audience. Financial education right? Or financial curriculums, or, tangible information that we can teach, and there's a right or wrong. A credit, interest rate works like this, a mortgage works like this. Like, it's terms, conditions, and this is how it works. Financial literacy, right, is this idea that you took that curriculum, you taught it or gave it out, and somebody's able to comprehend it and understand where, if they need to give it back or teach it to someone else, they can do it. Financial capability is that moment where I now have the education, I understand the literacy, and I can act on it when I need to use it for me. And so, financial well-being sits probably between literacy and capability, because when I understand and I have confidence in my understanding, and I'm capable and I can act on my, I don't let my emotions get the best of me, right? That's where I'm well. And so employers probably run the gamut at this point here, where they offer financial education. Financial education is really easy. There's a lot of out of the box, great financial education all over the place, right? Financial wellness, to bring that component in, is more of that capability piece. And to get people there, I think initially a lot of employers are, if we open this can of worms up, is everybody just going to be banging on the door? They want more money.
Yeah.
And there's a great group actually in the UK, Harbor Capital. They issued an ETF called Happy, HAPY, with Dan Ariely, who's a great behavioral finance researcher. And it was all around this idea that when you've got employee happiness, they will create better productivity. And the companies that they put in this ETF, they went and did research and showed that employees don't just, more money is always helpful, but giving them the support and the education and then the wellness that they need so they can maximize those dollars, right? And what we are seeing is that increase in employers helping employees understand how to maximize their dollars and understand how they work.
Yeah.
Right?
I think
401k here, if it's offered, I don't know the statistic, but there are a lot of people that are leaving that money on the table. And they'll say things like, well, I'm already short on my paycheck. I can't afford to contribute. And honestly, what we have to get them into the mindset of, let's figure out what we got to do. Let's get a realistic, like, if there's any way to even squeeze out $5 a week, because a lot of times there's a match here in the US. And so if there's an employer match, that's actually free money that you're leaving on the table. And if it's pre-tax dollars, which it is in a 401k situation, it's double free money, because their government is giving you a benefit to lower your taxes, and your employer is matching some level of the money you're putting in. Yeah. So we have to, again, back to those rules of engagement, right? And you and I joke about this. I know you're such a sports guy with especially all your background stuff, right? You can't go in with your soccer rules to go play American football. Right? You can't go in and play soccer rules on the baseball field. And so understanding all these different, how you can maximize the game, is actually what will make you more well. And it's those small things that people don't realize. That small thing, hey, I did that right, builds confidence. Building confidence is actually pretty great, because when you feel like you have a small win, it actually compounds and helps you get another small win.
Yeah. We again, we talk about that a lot, and there's a lot of focus again in the UK on education, and rightly so to a certain degree, because we don't learn the basics at school. I know in the US this is being rolled out. I think you're a little bit ahead of us, quite a way ahead, but hopefully we'll catch up. But as you say, education will still only get you so far. What I don't think people realize is that if we get it all in schools and we teach it, that will have a massive impact. But then I was having a conversation about this yesterday with someone. It's about people feeling empowered. We use that word all the time. You've got to feel empowered. you've got to feel confident to take action, to make decisions. And that doesn't come just by looking at textbooks or, it's the first step maybe, but then it's what happens after that and building your understanding of those concepts and then your confidence to take action. There's a question actually, Cara, just from Phil. Thanks, Phil. Asking you just to tell us why self-awareness is so crucial to the development of good financial well-being.
Because, again, back to this component of financial education, if we're not self-aware of who we are, then we read the financial education and we try to fit into it. We're like, okay, I need, this is what it says I do. This is what I said I do. But if that's not where your values really lie, if that's not really what resonates with you, you're not going to execute that financial plan correctly. So your financial well-being, if you're doing the keeping up with the Joneses, or you're just trying to be on the path that everyone is in front of you. So I always tell a great story about when I first got married. I have an older sibling, and she got married and had kids, and we moved from like the city area in New York out, she moved out to the suburbs and started to have kids and put the cars in the driveway and the whole 9 yards. And I didn't, again, I was the second one to have kids, and this just seemed to be what not just she did, but mostly everybody I knew. And so all of a sudden, I just started to follow suit, right? I went out. I know I have 5 kids, if the audience doesn't know, and they're all about 1 year apart. Some are even a bit less. But as I started to have these kids, once I got to like kid number 2, we went out to the suburbs and we bought the big house and we got the car. And then I got there and I had figured out the financial plan to afford it. And I was miserable. First of all, nobody tells you buy the big house, you got to clean the big house. And that was, so now I needed more money because I can cook, but cleaning's not my forte. So now, like, I was like, whoa, the budget doesn't work because if I need somebody to come in and help me clean this thing, right? Like, that's a whole nother number. And to be part of the friends that were still in the city, or I had just left work, which I really wasn't that comfortable with. So all of a sudden I was spending a lot of money to go back to the city to still keep up with like this life that I wanted to still be part of. So I was hiring a babysitter to come stay with the kids some of the days. It was this whole, and then my husband now was in a 2.5-hour commute, an hour and 15, 20 minutes each way. So our relationship, we weren't together. And so I looked at this plan and I looked at this life, and they weren't aligned because we were spending a lot of money to live in that house, but I was miserable. And I thought, well, what can I spend these dollars and be happier? And Ryan, nobody, there was not one person I told my plan to who said, you have a great idea. Everybody I told my plan to told me I was the stupidest girl ever. I left this, maybe it was about a 5,000 square foot house. I packed everything up. We were barely in it, maybe 18, 19 months. And I moved us back to Manhattan. 5 kids.
Wow.
Manhattan. We lived in 1,100 square feet. And people thought I was bananas. And let me tell you, 1,100 square feet in Manhattan, not cheap, right? So it was probably, I would say, a little bit more than we were spending in Brooklyn. But we had, in terms of assets, we had less. We couldn't have 2 cars in the city. We could only have 1, right? We couldn't have, all the kids' bicycles and, like those like little trike cars.
Yeah.
1,100 square feet. We downsized. We got rid of everything we owned. Everybody got 1 bucket, and that was all you could bring with you. But what I bought was my time. My husband's job was a 3-block walk. He came to every event the kids ever had at school. We all were within a 4-block radius of one another, the school, the apartment, his job. I was able to go back to work. So nobody thought this was a good financial plan. Everybody said to me, and I rented an apartment in the city, and I know we don't have time for that, so we should have another conversation because people are like, you should own your home. Well, I was brought up that way too. You should own your home until you're buying in an area that you're working class, but the number is high. It actually didn't make sense if we wound up in financial trouble to own something because we couldn't get out of it. Remember, I was a trader before all of this. I'm a trader. So I look at supply and demand and I look at, like, if I got to get out, what is that market going to look like? Right. So that was really how I made that decision. But that financial plan did not resonate with anyone. And in the textbook, it looked like I was making all wrong decisions.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
was by far the best decision I ever made. It was the best money I ever spent. And I attribute it not only to happiness, but the opportunities by being there. I wouldn't be in the career I'm in today had I not done the work that I was able to do by living in the city.
Yeah, great story. Great story. And just shows you what a hard decision for a lot of people to have made that as well. You think you've got everything, you know, your ducks in a row all lined up. You've got the house, the car, everything else. But it takes something like that to realize what is important.
Well, and when nobody's on your side, right?
Yeah.
Like when everybody's telling you you're making a bad financial decision.
Yeah.
Or you're being, I think there was, and somebody put it in here, different judgment that we make. Like I was told that I was being frivolous or I was chasing the wrong ideas or, why did I want to be so showy or why wasn't where I was living enough for me? Why, like that was, and I really had to, my journey, and I think you know it, then sent me into a total tailspin 4 years later when I moved out of Manhattan and moved my kids to a fishing village in Costa Rica, right? Where we went from total Manhattan to this no running water power sometimes. Because I then realized raising kids in Manhattan, they were just being exposed to so much, right? That it was this constant. So it's what I think I want to stress is it's a constant ebb and flow. It's not a crock pot, fix it and forget it. Your financial well-being is not just I'm going to get it right and then I can like rest on the laurels. And to Phil's point, that self-awareness, we change, we grow up. Think about who I was at 10 or 12 or 15 or 25 or 30. Checking in with yourself. Is this still working for me? Is this still what I'm looking to gain? I'm reading, I just pretty much finished it, the Elon Musk book. And, we could go down a ton of barrels, but a lot of the guys that have worked for him, and look, he's got his own stuff, but they talk about they were willing to give up so much of their time for the money and to be part of this project. But there came a point where they checked in when maybe they started to have a family or something happened where they said, my time at Tesla or SpaceX was up because I now wanted to trade, my time for the money.
Yeah. That's an interesting point. And we've had another question. It comes quite nicely on to Grant's question. And I'd love to hear this as well. You haven't talked to me too much about this. How you then kind of develop the self-awareness within your family. And this is a big one. We do a whole, workshop on this and have support. We work with a brilliant guy called Will Rainey. I think you know Will.
Yeah,
Do you know Will
I know
Rainey?
Will. Yeah.
So he's brilliant. So he works with us on this and he's definitely, everyone can connect with him. But, how you impart this knowledge and this self-awareness onto your family, onto your children, and how hard that is if you haven't got it sorted, right? How can we possibly be expected to teach our own children if we didn't know about this stuff, if we haven't learned it for ourselves? But how have you done some of that?
So as I mentioned, I have a basketball team of children. So for me, money was always at the forefront of every conversation. I did a whole piece on, I taught my kids from when they were 2 years old in Chuck E. Cheese. Do you guys have Chuck E. Cheeses in the UK? It's like a friend of mine calls them kid casinos, but they're like arcades where you pay a quarter and you win tickets. And so literally from when they were 2 years old, right? Every little kid loves this arcade and this idea of we don't need instant gratification and we're not going to buy the bouncy ball for 6 tickets. We're going to come back next week and we're going to save our tickets and we're going to buy a bigger prize. And right. And so that really, I remember having those conversations with them from infancy, right? I started banking Tuesdays with them again, from when they were small kids. They of course wanted to go initially because of the lollipop, but I was super fortunate. I grew up with a family that was very pro bank. And we went to the bank as a extended family. This is very unusual, on a weekly basis. Grandmother, uncles, and everybody asked you about how much you had, why you know, what you were depositing, where you got the money from. So there was so much accountability that for me, I remember having these great experiences. So I really wanted to have that with my kids. And so I did. So they were fortunate that they were exposed to it super, super young. But as I just mentioned a minute ago, what I recognized a couple of years into being in the city, it wasn't what I was telling my kids. Okay, we were living, as I mentioned, in this 1,100 square foot apartment. So we go from this 5,000, you know, do the visual here. We go from a 3-floor, 5,000 square foot house with a backyard and a play set to an apartment, 1,100 square feet, 5 kids, 3 girls in one room, 2 boys in one room, my husband and I in the other room. There's no kitchen to be spoken about. You know, your couch and your dining table are all like one big area, right? So it was just insane. And so the first time we gone back out to visit people in Jersey, my kids were like, wow, they must be so rich because their houses were big. Because kids don't understand that idea of, right, location, different, you know, why Manhattan would be worth more than New Jersey, this and that. Well, go forward. Now we're in the city for a couple of years, and the people that these kids are being exposed to, we were the I saw. Not many people opt to have 5 children and live in Manhattan, right? And so the kids that they were going to school with and hanging out with had a lot. And I'm not here to judge that, but we couldn't keep up with that. We have a 5 times multiplier. So if something's $50, we can afford $50. But we would have to afford $250 for us to give it to everybody. And so that really became the messaging that I had to, and of course, every kid is thinking about themselves. So they're stamping their feet. And it did bring me to a point in 2015 where it became so overwhelming to me that I couldn't explain it enough. And I opted, and I was fortunate enough to have this be able to be my life, but I opted to move them to this fishing village in Costa Rica and put them in a place where they lived amongst really local people that didn't have much of anything. There was, as I mentioned, running water was optional, power was optional, there was no grocery store, everything you had was valuable. And I could write a whole book about that experience. But I knew that wasn't going to be the life we were going to live. But I knew perspective was everything.
Yeah.
And I knew if I could get them to walk those roads and experience it from their own eyeballs, not me telling them, it was going to resonate with them so much more.
Yeah.
And I have to say, now my kids, almost 10 years later, my kids still talk about that experience as if it was yesterday.
How long was you there for, Kara?
We lived there for 1 year.
Okay.
And they went to school there. They went to a local school, and it was a fascinating experience. It totally changed. I could have never been in public. That's afterwards when I went into nonprofit work. And I don't think, had I ever had that experience, could I have went from private sector to public sector. Because again, as one of your, audience members had said before, judgment, like I think I thought if you like go from private sector to public sector, obviously you're not good enough anymore, right? Like you have your own narratives. And so what I realized is when I came back was my narratives they had all changed. My opinion of what I saw. And then I came back with a little saying that I said, I no longer care what people can do with a box of shiny new crayons. I love what people do with a box of broken, used crayons. Because I started to realize it's pretty amazing what people can do once you take down all the extras. You get to see who people really are, how they're resilient, how they think. And I do think that resilience and that able to ebb and flow really is what helps people. And the more knowledge they have, the more perspective they're able to garner, the more broad their viewpoints, so they can recognize we don't all look the same. We're not trying to keep up with anyone. That's what's going to create your best financial well-being.
Brilliant.
I know that was a boatload of information.
Well, we're almost out. I know we had all the technical issues, and again, apologies for that. Hopefully the next one, if we do a next one, we won't have that. We'll have more time to speak to guests. But I wanted just to finish. obviously, you know, a little bit about your work now, and I know about it. We've had many conversations, many hours talking about the behaviors and the habits and the attitudes, hence the name. But can you tell us just a bit of insight into it and give us, or the audience or people watching this back, a flavor of some of the behaviors, you know, the typical behaviors that you see and that people might resonate with and relate to?
And it's interesting. I don't know who the audience is, but one of the big things that we've been able to see, and now we have the data to prove it, is financial professionals, traditional financial professionals. When we, especially when we run the analysis of their assessments, we all pretty much look the same. We have dominances in security and planning. You know, we are spontaneity and carefree or kept at bay, and right. And so it's fascinating to me because what I'm recognizing as we train over 9,500, financial practitioners across the globe to work with their clients around these habits and behaviors. The more people I'm in a room with, the more I talk to, we think the same. Not only do we have the same ideas and behaviors, probably what's put us interested in this work is because we have similar beliefs. But here's the problem. Our clients don't look like us. So we're all sitting in a room together as we're creating content or education or, coursework. And we all go, oh, yeah, that sounds great. Yep, that's what we do. Because it makes sense to all of us, except that the people that we're designing it for don't look anything like us. And so we really need to get those other people in the room so we can hear, does this resonate with you? If we've got somebody who shows up with a dominance in carefree, and we had a plan that day as a financial professional to sit with them, we're going to work on a budget, and you're going to leave here today with the most beautiful budget, you're lucky if that client ever sees you again.
Yeah.
And so what we really stress is, how do we help our practitioners work with clients that don't look like them, or when somebody, comes to engage them, how do they read their behaviors and habits to bring them the most, robust plan, but that's going to resonate with them?
Yeah, brilliant. Well, just a real insight that was, and a little dip into the world of Cara and money habitudes. I think we're almost out of time. So just let me say thank you. Thanks to everyone for sticking with us, those that did, those that managed to find the new link. We don't make it easy for you. Love to hear your feedback on the thread. Tell us what you think, what you'd like to see. You know, if there's demand for it, we'll do another one. And we've got a few others lined up, so we want to, but it depends if people want them, right? But thank you, Cara. Absolutely, as always, brilliant. I could just listen to you and talk to you for hours, as we often do. But yeah, we'll share some details afterwards, find out more about you and your work, and we'll continue the conversation. But thanks, everyone, and have a great rest of the day and a great week. And have a good day, Cara. I know it's a bit early for you out there.
Have a wonderful day. Thanks, all. Thanks, Ryan. This is always so fun.